In today's Locked On Pelicans, I'm going to tell you why the Pels have to keep building around Zion Williamson, especially after what he did against the Los Angeles Lakers. It's the Wednesday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Wednesday, day after Mardi Gras, and of course, after a late Pelicans game, losing to the Los Angeles Lakers by 21 points. But Zion looked awesome. I particularly want to break down his performance against the Lakers because I do think this type of game says, yeah, you probably got to keep building around Zion Williamson. And I'll tell you why for one reason in particular. Then we're going to look at the bigs that struggled and then see who else is safe on this roster if they want to make the playoffs next season. So we're going to cover all that and more in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. So let's get into this one. The Pelicans losing to the Los Angeles Lakers 136-115. Some really interesting things I thought in this one, and it's really around Zion Williamson because, again, he was awesome in this game, particularly in the second half, but also in the first half here too. 37 points on the night, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 3 personal fouls. He was 17 for 23, 74% from the field here, 3 of 6 from the free throw line. The free throw shooting really has not been good from him, but everything else has been particularly great. Would have had 40 points if he made all of his free throws. As simple as that. He has looked basically outstanding for the most part since his return from injury a little over a month ago, almost 2 months ago at this point in time. He looks that good. He looks like a franchise player. He looks like a top 15, top 10 guy in the NBA right now. And with this type of performance, and one of the things that I thought was interesting was he was benched early in the first half of this game because he had 3 fouls and then didn't foul the rest of the way. He's the only Pelican that really made an impact in this game. The Pelicans lost by 21 points in this one. Zion Williamson was basically the only person who had a positive plus minus other than some of the guys at the end of the game when they just kind of threw them in there, right? Jose Alvarado, Jamal Cain, and Jeremiah Robinson Earl all were a plus 2. Zion Williamson was a plus 13 in a 21-point loss. The rest of the starters were minus 11, minus 25, minus 29, minus 29. Bruce Brown, minus 17. Jordan Hawkins off the bench, minus 8. It was Zion carrying the team and just doing everything he could. In a weird way, you could say this game wasn't as close as a 21-point loss because basically Zion got literally no other help whatsoever in this game. Yeah, Trey Murphy had 19 points. That was good. But other than that, there wasn't a ton from other guys. Hawkins was 17 off the bench. We'll look at him a little bit later in the week and later in the show. So it was Zion doing it. And here's the thing, right? This is what makes it so eye-opening to me and the type of game where you go, oh yeah, you probably need to continue building around Zion Williamson and you don't try and trade him this offseason. And that's, they were playing the Lakers, who are coached by JJ Redick, who was on this team for a year and a half with Zion Williamson, who knows him pretty well. We can safely say, I think at this point, JJ Redick is at least at minimum an above-average head coach. Their game plan was slow Zion Williamson down and throw a bunch of different looks at him and things like that. Limit Zion Williamson is what they tried to do. Did they accomplish that? Nope. Look, the Lakers won this game because the Pelicans defense was garbage. And Luka's incredible. There's that two, as well as LeBron James. They combined for 74 points. But the Pelicans having their defense just not show up at all in this game, in any capacity pretty much, tells you a lot about them not slowing Zion Williamson down. Their game plan was not let Zion get his and we'll let him get his and then no one else will beat us here, right? Their game plan was limit Zion Williamson. And with that being the game plan, with no one else showing up, Zion had this one at least close at times because of the way that he was playing. It was just the overall team defense that let them down. And Zion's impact like this has basically been since he returned from injury. Last week, we looked at him in per 36-minute numbers, and they're outstanding. They would easily blow out the best of his career. Look, even with what he's doing right now in limited minutes, these are basically career highs for him across the board, which is also impressive. If you look at his per game numbers, 24.3 points per game is right on up there. He was playing 31.5 minutes per game last season. This year, he's playing 28.3 minutes, and he's averaging more points per game, more rebounds per game, more assists per game, more steals, more blocks, basically all of that. It's pretty incredible what he's doing. If you look at his per game numbers, just since he returned from injury, those are also basically just ridiculous. And it's not counting this game right now, but basically, when you factor this one in, these numbers are going to go up. It's essentially slightly over 25 points per game and 7 rebounds in just 27 minutes. He's playing at I wouldn't put him in the top 10. I would not put him in the top 10, top 15, top 20 guys in the NBA. Yeah, he's easily and safely in there. And every sort of metric bears this out. The net rating differential when he's on the court versus not is plus 14.4. They're better 10 points offensively with him on the court. That's the 96th percentile per cleaning the glass. They limit opponents by about 4.4 points per 100 possessions on the defensive side of the ball. Look, he's never going to be an elite defender, but that puts him at the 82nd percentile, that their defense is better with him on the court. That is saying something. He's committed on that side of the ball like we've never seen before. And when you watch the way he was finishing in this game, getting to the rim, layups, dunking, beating LeBron James, beating double teams, passing out at the right times to do it, it's a really phenomenal performance. And if his teammates made some more shots, played a little bit better, and they didn't in this game, New Orleans was just 9 for 34 from 3. That's 26.5%. They shot under 50% from the field here. That he could have had, 10 assists in this one instead of finishing with just 6. It's the type of performances against a good team right now whose defense has been playing well, where you go, okay, it's not the Spurs. It's not some of the bad teams that New Orleans had been playing, had been beating. The Suns, who look like garbage, even though they won this night after being down big, came back to win. Those are the type of performance where you go, yeah, I think you got to build around this guy. It's why he's so maddening of a player, because it feels like it could fall apart at literally any second. And that's not fun because of the history that he has. And it makes you not want to trust him, not want to believe in him. That stuff is all very, very valid. But he has looked that good recently. And I'm curious what you think. Let me know. Are you back on the Zion train? Let me know in the comments down below. Who didn't play well were the big men for New Orleans. I want to look at that because that's very concerning in this game, and I'll explain why. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by OpenPhone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night, and as your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. So that's where OpenPhone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. So for just $15 a month, the cost of a few coffees, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. So right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba for 20% off 6 months. Openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have an existing number with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast. I'm literally recording this 12:15, basically the night of Mardi Gras. Fat Tuesday, it's technically Wednesday morning. That's how dedicated we are right here. Despite being out all day in the French Quarter and Bywater and Marigny, walking back home, it's been an adventure today, y'all. We're here, staying up late, talking about the game, giving you the insight you want to know about this team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And don't forget about the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. And start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pelicans newsletter. So let's keep talking about this loss to the Los Angeles Lakers. There's an area, look, the Lakers are good. They've won 7 straight right now. They're surging, especially when you see LeBron James and Luka Doncic clicking and making other guys look better. We're going to talk about that here. Jaxson Hayes and some of the other ones in particular. I thought Trey Madison even too. The Pelicans big men here really struggled in this game. And that is a concern. You're not going to convince me Jaxson Hayes is good. You're not even going to convince me that he's like good with Luka, right? If it takes Luka making you look good, you're not that good of a player. Luka tends to make bigs look better. An elite point guard is going to do that sort of thing. But Jaxson Hayes has not played well at all this season for the Los Angeles Lakers. This is someone who's averaging 6.1 points per game and 4.4 rebounds. We know him pretty well. We know what he's capable of doing, right? He only has 6 games a season, 7 now, where he scored between 10 and 19 points in double digits. The majority of his games, 32, are single digits, right? His game high before this game was 12 total points. He only has 3 games with double-digit rebounds this season. He is not a particularly good player whatsoever. Look, he picked up a veteran minimum contract, option to just stay here, because he wasn't going to get more than that anywhere else. Not good. He was perfect in this game. He went 8 of 8 for 19 points and 10 rebounds. I don't even care with Luka, right? Like, I don't even care with Luka that he's done that, right? The other night against the Clippers, he had 6 points, 7 rebounds. The night before that with the Clippers, right? Couple nights before that, 5 points, 1 rebound. This is not a good player. Even with Luka in a 23-point win over the Denver Nuggets, he had 4 points and 4 rebounds. You're not going to tell me that he's good. We're going to move on beyond this here. Yet he was made to look good by the New Orleans big men here because they just didn't really know what to do. This was an awful game for Yves Missi. 2 points, 2 rebounds, minus 25 on the night. That's not going to be okay. Kelly Olynyk, a little bit better. He's 4 of 9 from the field. That's not bad, but 11 points, 4 rebounds, minus 11 on the night. Carlo Makovic off the bench, not particularly impactful. I thought he was probably the best out of all of them. 5 points, 4 boards, 18 minutes of action. That's at least a little bit better. The bigs need to show up because the Pelicans got killed on the boards in this game. The Lakers out-rebounded them 17-10 in terms of offensive rebounding and 34-25 in terms of defensive rebounding. The defensive rebounding number is also a little bit skewed because New Orleans was just, missing, shots and things like that. But the Pelicans in this game had a defensive rebounding rate of 56.8%. They're already last in the league when it comes to that, and that's basically like, your defensive rebounds versus opponents' offensive rebounds, and where do you kind of stand here? New Orleans, going into this game, it's 29th. They've improved slightly. On defensive rebounding rate, it's 72.4%. Essentially, they're getting 72.4% of all opponents' misses. They were below 60 in this game. Tells you how bad they were. The Lakers had an offensive rebounding rate of 43.2%. It's going to be the opposite of what the the number is for the Pelicans there. The Lakers in this one had 21 second chance points. You just can't allow that to happen against Jaxson Hayes. Now, look, they're a bigger team. Luka can rebound. LeBron can rebound. Others can rebound as well. But that's still pretty unacceptable to let Jaxson Hayes get 7 defensive boards, right? Like, that's not going to do it. Jared Vanderbilt grabbing 8 rebounds total, too. New Orleans only had one person, Trey Murphy, who had more than 5 rebounds, total rebounds, in this game. No one for New Orleans even had 5 defensive boards. This is something they need to figure out next season. You're starting front court, Kelly Olynyk, Yves Missi, and Zion had a combined 6 defensive rebounds in this game. That's not acceptable. The Lakers with Jaxson Hayes, again, not an elite player at all. Trey Jemison, we know him pretty well. He's not a good rebounder. We went over that. He had 5 boards here in 17 minutes. But the Lakers also often went pretty small and went with smaller lineups. And New Orleans and their bigs still couldn't out-rebound them in those minutes. That's a concern. It's been a concern this season. It's something they definitely need to address this offseason. Yes, we're happy with Yves Missi and how he's been playing overall. We like Kelly Olynyk because I think he fits. Doesn't mean that either of those 2 guys should be, written in Sharpie as a starter going into next season. And I expect New Orleans to be looking for another big man this offseason. And I think it would, it's going to be a Jared Allen type of guy. Could be someone in the draft too. Derek Queen's there, depending on where their pick ends up. Hopefully not as low as where Derek Queen would be, which is still only going to be like 7 or 8. But that's someone to maybe keep an eye on as well. But I do think they're going to want to try and improve in that area, because this game where they don't have elite big men at all and their bigs kind of outplay you, that's a concern. Yeah, look, Luka changes the dynamic of that. Don't get me wrong. But there's no reason it should have just been that easy for Luka to lob it to Jaxson Hayes. And some of that's on coaching and the defensive game plan going into this one. It is. But overall, these bigs just need to play better. And they haven't been. And that means New Orleans needs to upgrade in this area. By the way, I told you in yesterday's show, don't worry about the Pelicans screwing up their tank. They had been 4-2 since the All-Star break, but overall you knew that they were going to come back down to earth because there are still some pretty big flaws with this team. And as we talked about that 3 big lineup of Zion, Olynyk, Ormakovic, and Yves Missi, said, when you play some better teams, let's see how that shakes out. Did not shake out well for them in this game and the loss, which, look, at this point is good. You could argue that Zion having 37 looking awesome in this game, and then the Lakers winning is the best case scenario. And in one sense that you would be correct. It's not fun rooting for losses. I really don't like this, but it's also the reality of where the Pelicans are right now. And so with the bigs playing like this, at this kind of level, struggling, having moments, other guys just not having good games, Hawkins kind of being inconsistent but putting things together. Who would you say is safe on this roster? Like, if you were like, we're gonna really retool the team, who are you like, I'm not trading that guy? Let's discuss that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by BetterHelp. Who's in your support system? We all need people to lean on, whether it's friends, family, mentors, or professionals. Even the strongest leaders and athletes know that asking for help makes them better. So therapy is one of the best ways to build a strong support system. It's not just for tough times, right? It helps with setting boundaries, developing coping skills, and basically just being the best version of yourself. It's not just about crisis moments. It's a tool for self-improvement, stress management, navigating life's challenges, basically just everyday benefits. So build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Fully online, making it easier than ever to connect with a licensed therapist from anywhere. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. Don't forget about Locked On Saints too. They're committing to Derek Carr. Does that mean they still might draft a QB? Especially if Sanders drops a little bit. Would you take him? Ross Jackson's looking at all of that and more over the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's wrap up the show talking a little bit about who's safe, if you even want them to be safe, I think. Who's someone on this team that you look at and you're like, they should, that's how we'll phrase it. They definitely should be here next year. So look, Zion is obviously safe. Trey Murphy is obviously safe. And I think DeJounte Murray is probably safe, even if it's just by default in a technicality because he's going to be injured. So would a team actually trade for him? So I think those are all the three guys that you can be like, 1,000% will be here next year. Yves Missi, I think, is pretty safe when it comes to this team as well because he's looked pretty good. And the only reason I would see him getting moved is if it's like the Cleveland Cavaliers saying like, you got to include him in the deal if you want Jared Allen. And I think if New Orleans just really wants to go for it next season, maybe that's the type of thing that they do here. But everybody else, I think, is up for debate in some capacity. I'm still fighting off whatever I had the other day or 2 weeks ago now, right? You know, some of the names at the bottom of the roster, we can be like, yeah, like it doesn't like truthfully matter. Brandon Boston Jr., you know, whatever. He could be here, he could not be here. Jeremiah Robinson Earl, likely not going to be here, but could be not. And it just kind of is what it is, right? Carlos maybe a little bit safe because I think he's shown some promise this year. Jose Alvarado, I'd say, is like 80% safe. I think he probably should be on the roster next year, but you might need to include him in a trade. So I think there is some level of risk, even if we love him here on Locked On Pelicans. Jordan Hawkins, I think it's 50-50. You can make an argument for him to be on the roster. The shooting the past couple of games has been better from him, but he's still been pretty inconsistent. But look, 4 of 10 from 3 against the Lakers with 4 rebounds, 17 points. I'll take that. I think that's pretty good. You know, CJ McCollum, I think overall has been good this year, but this was not a good game for him. 10 points on 4 of 11 shooting, 1 of 5 from 3. Not that we wanted the team to win, but if you did want them to win, if they did themselves want to win, his performance in this one where like he's getting open looks from the way that they are guarding Zion Williamson, you know, leaves a lot to be desired at times. Bruce Brown here, I think, is a guy that they probably shouldn't bring back. I didn't really think that was like really a flagrant one. I figured they would call it that way. Did not like the double text on him and Jared Vanderbilt when probably just should have been on Jared Vanderbilt, though Bruce Brown did stand over Dalton Connect on that, but still, I don't think that was that bad of a foul overall. Kelly Olynyk, I think, is a guy that probably should be on the roster next year for 2 reasons, actually. One, I do think he fits with Zion Williamson pretty well, and that's a rather important thing in my opinion. That it just seems to kind of work with him. When you look at those on-off numbers that I was talking about, you know, if people still on the roster, Kelly Olynyk has a plus 24.6. The offense is better with him on the court. The defense is significantly better with him on the court too, mainly because the defensive rebounding is significantly better by about 8% when he is out there on the court. It's really limited sample size with him, so that's one thing, right? Like basically what it's saying is he grades out to being like a 51 win player. You know, it with him, you win 51 games with him on the team with the numbers he's putting up. Like that is not exactly how that works. So there's some limitations there in small sample size theater when it comes to it. But overall, like I think we've seen there's something there with Zion that seems to really work. And you've seen a little bit of a 2-man game between them. You've seen Zion also have the 2-man game with Trey and basically like everyone on the team. But Kelly Olynyk, I think, is someone that we say probably like should be on the roster next season. But the other reason is his salary. They don't have a ton of mid-tier salary to trade. You know, it's basically just Herb Jones. But now next year, Olynyk is going to be making basically $13.5 million. That can get you someone better. You can include him and like Jose or him and Hawkins, and you're looking at a $20 million player, right? Like that's how you can potentially bring in a Jared Allen without maybe giving up Yves Missi or having to trade CJ or something along those lines. So having that kind of salary on this team, I think, is an important thing. It's also why you probably don't bring Bruce Brown back, right? Him making $20 million, they wanted that as expiring salary. You know, I saw the thing, and maybe we need to do like a whole show on this, but if you go back to the trade deadline when I told you there is zero chance that they were going to trade for RJ Barrett, and it is financial reasons why, and the rumors came out today like, oh, Barrett was involved in the talks and stuff like that, and the Pelicans didn't want him. Correct. I told you that. Especially because, look, you don't even need sources for me to tell you that, because it's pretty obvious because of the numbers and the math, and that's why looking at the salary cap and understanding the collective bargaining agreement and CBA is something that's important, hence why we talk about it on the show here. So I don't think you bring Bruce Brown back because, you know, you traded for him basically to let him expire. They can say all the right things they want of like, maybe we'll keep him. They're not going to keep him. I mean, you know, if he wants to sound like a $5 million deal, sure. I don't know if that's what he's going to be looking for. I really don't know what his market would be, you know, out there. Of other guys on the team, though, that, you know, potentially are safe or not, I think we'd said Brandon Boston Jr. could go either way on him. He's cheap enough that, like, you probably should bring him back. Herb Jones, obviously, is the other name that I completely forgot here because he's been injured, you know, out for the season. He's safe. Like, it's Herb. We love Herb. I was wearing a Herb Jones jersey throughout a ton of Mardi Gras when it was super hot during the day. We love Herb Jones. Those are the guys that I think really are going to be truly safe on the team. So Zion, Trey, DeJounte, Herb, you know, in that kind of middle range. I would even say Kelly Olynyk on that should stay on the team. You know, the next kind of tier of guys I think you're looking at is going to be like a Jose Alvarado, a Jordan Hawkins, and a CJ. And Yves Missi as well, that are like 80% or higher to be back. I think you could maybe drop CJ a little bit lower, just knowing the salary cap situation for them, that they're almost going to have to do that. Everyone else, you know, you can make a claim for him to stay, you know, especially Carlo. But Jeremiah Robinson Earl, Brandon Boston Jr., those are kind of like 50-50 guys. Does it matter? Does it not? Kind of thing. Let me know who's safe. Who's like the people you're like, those players should be 100% safe. Let me know in the comments down below on YouTube. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. I hope you had a wonderful Mardi Gras season. It's a lot of fun here at the Locked On Pelicans household. If you saw me on the route, said hi, I appreciate it. Always say hi if you see me in person, particularly at the arena. And we're going to talk about, there's a survey from the Saints that I actually think sheds a lot of light on the Pelicans that I want to get into. I actually want to also look at the Pelicans shot profile since the NBA's trade deadline in the All-Star game. Some really interesting things in there. We'll look at all that and, you know, get into Jordan Hawkins a little bit more this week too, I think, and recap all the games as well. So we got a lot more to come here this week on Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. And I'll be back with y'all tomorrow.